Hi friends, it's Victor Costa, Peace, Love, and Muscles. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're having an outstanding day. Today's video is about the elements of a repetition and also how do you know when to move up in weight? Now people ask me that question all the time. They want to know how are you supposed to move up in weight and also maintain good form. So there has to be this little period of adjustment. But first I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the elements of a repetition. So gosh, if we just do exercises and we don't think too much about this stuff, it just looks like you're picking up weights and putting them down. But there's really a lot more going on to mindful bodybuilding and how to make a connection with your body. So that's one of the elements of a repetition. It's the connection. It's the mind-muscle connection. Also, I guess you could call it the level of presence and awareness within the exercise itself. And that's bringing yourself back into the movement. I have some great stories about people who were not really bringing themselves into the exercise. They were just going through the motions. And then with a couple of slight adjustments of how they were thinking about the exercise, suddenly they were affecting the muscles in a much, much greater way. So that's one element of the repetition. It is the mindful connection. The second one, obviously, is the form, which is the way that you're postured during the exercise. Of course, another element is the momentum or speed at which you're moving. And the fourth element, and I'm sure I could come up with more, are sub-elements, but it is obviously the resistance or the weight that you're using. Now, when you think of it, what we're trying to do is use these weights or resistance as tools to help build our bodies. And when we're doing these exercises, obviously we want to maximize all of those elements, the concentration, the form, the technique, the right speed and momentum, if you will, combined with the right resistance. So when I exercise, let's say I'm doing curls with 30-pound dumbbells, I ask myself, did I really give 100% attention to each one of those elements? And if I can, if I have, that's when I know it's time to move up in weight. Now, if I believe that I haven't really given attention to each one of those elements, then I don't move up in weight. My objective is to master the weight that I'm using, to get as much out of that weight as possible before moving up in weight. Now, you could make an argument that you'll stay there forever, right? Because if you can always get better at concentrating, you can always get better at technique, you can always get better at judging the speed and playing around with the speed. So everyone has to make a decision about when to move up in weights. I like to make sure that I've mastered all of those elements before I move up, but if you don't want to, obviously you can move up in weights earlier, right? Now, instead of me using the 30s, I can use the 35s, but something has to give, right? If I'm going to use heavier weights, maybe I have to change one of those other elements. Maybe I have to be a little less mindful because I'm not going to be able to lift that heavier weight with the exact same level of connectedness to my body. So maybe I'm going to, let's say I was using 100% mindful connection, maybe I'll reduce that to 80% just so I can use that extra power, if you will, to get the weight up. So obviously something has to give. This is a bit of a balancing act. My objective is to continually use heavier and heavier tools, using that maximum contraction, maximum speed, maximum ability, maximum connection, maximum everything. So I'm devoting all of my attention to those elements, and that's how I approach a weight. I try to master that weight. But of course, you can continue to move up even before you've mastered those things, but obviously something is going to have to give. You know, some of the bodybuilders that I used to train with would occasionally go and lift a weight, now not necessarily doing a set or an exercise, but just lift the weight, just get their hands on the weight that they couldn't quite use yet. In fact, I started to adopt this technique as well because I would want to at least know what that weight felt like in my hand. So at least I was kind of getting somehow acclimated to what something would feel like, right? Sort of experimenting, sort of going down to that heavy end of the stack, even though I wasn't quite capable yet of using those weights for exercises, I was still able to kind of get a sense of what they felt like and have that sort of sit within me, sit within my memory, sit within my body. So it is always good to kind of test yourself a little bit. But we're talking about just when do you know to move up in weight during your regular workout routine. And of course, obviously, this is a little bit of a balancing act and there's no precise way. But what I do to really keep the integrity of the exercise is I try to squeeze the most out of the weights that I'm using. And I ask myself those questions. Could I have had more mindfulness and concentration and connection? Could I have changed the technique a little bit, or the form? Maybe if I had deleveraged a little bit, I would actually be able to hit the muscles in a different way. And then the other one obviously is the speed and the momentum. Do I feel like I'm laboring this weight up, or am I pumping iron? And have I tried everything in between? And obviously, guys, that's a pretty tough checklist, but that's how I would approach moving up in weight. I would at least try to touch on those elements before experimenting with heavier weights. But always, like I said, test yourself from time to time. Go to that heavier end of the stack just to kind of play around a little bit, not necessarily do repetitions with it, but just to get a sense of how that feels sort of into your vibration, okay? So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it was helpful to you. Thank you so much for everything. Peace, love, and muscles. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.